All right. Welcome, everyone, to the regular council meeting of September 5th. I think everyone had a great Labor Day weekend. I hope so. And the pool is officially closed, sadly. I know people were asking, like, hey, we've got another, like, hot week. But, yeah, we follow that protocol. And so, Judy, let's go ahead and call in the roll.
All right, Hausch.
I'm here.
Stokes.
Here.
McQueen. Here. Brown. DeVore Leonard.
Here.
And I do, by the way, she did text and is planning to be here, just FYI. Also present is Interim Village Manager Johnnie Burns, Planning and Zoning Administrator Meg Leatherman, Finance Director Amy Kemper, Solicitor Amy Blankenship, Chief Burgeon Slinky.
All right. So I think Johnnie and I are walking up front. All right. All right. I don't know if you all want to use that. Yeah. Got to trust me, right? So, yes, so we're going to raise our right hands. And, first of all, I want to say I solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution
That I will support the Constitution
and will obey the laws of the United States
and will obey the laws of the United States
and the state of Ohio,
and the state of Ohio,
and that I will in all respects
and that I will in all respects
observe the provisions of the Charter
observe the provisions of the Charter
and the ordinance
and the ordinance
of the Village of Yellow
of the Village of
Springs,
Yellow Springs,
and will faithfully discharge the duties of
and will faithfully discharge the duties of interim village manager.
All right, man. Yes. See if I can do this. I'm never all that skilled.
So Johnny, you got to come with different lapels on, like
All
a
right.
sport coat.
Wow, I did do it.
Hey.
And it is straight up. Yeah. All right. Good.
Was that cheer as loud as Denise got when she came in?
All right. So, next up are announcements. Do we have any announcements? Marian?
Yeah, I have one. The mediation program is having a training for people who would like to be mediators. It's happening at the end of September, beginning of October. There's still some slots. And if you're interested, you can email Diane Diller at mediation@yso.com. That seems like pretty easy to remember.
Yeah, and I'm glad you clarified that, because I think in the packet there was a flyer that had August dates, but I know.
There were some open houses.
Right, but then I also saw, September 30th, October 5th, 7th, 12th.
Those are the dates.
So, and we can get that on the Facebook page as well.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
Cool. Any other announcements? Oh, Paige. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So this is Slinky. Here, come. Slinky is a service dog in training with 4 paws for ability. Slink, come. You want to sit? Sit. Good boy. Very good. And he is our temporary foster. He'll be with us for about 3 to 4 weeks until he can move on to his advanced training with 4 paws. For those that don't know about 4 paws, wonderful organization. Look them up. They train dogs to help kids with disabilities, veterans. They just have to keep on everybody else wants to say hello to everybody.
You got to have a treat, apparently.
This relationship is a mutually beneficial relationship. So while we're right in here, so while we foster Slinky, we hope that he succeeds, and we hope that any other dog that we have in the future. Say hi. succeeds, because the goal of the project is to make sure of that. But in the event that anyone doesn't, then they have a program called Fabulous Flunkies that as a foster we'd be eligible to adopt this puppo or any of them, and then have a really well-behaved and well-trained therapy dog for our program. So, Slinky, say hello to everybody. Yeah, we're gonna go need a shower tomorrow. I'll drop him back off downstairs and return, so.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you. All right, yep, perfect timing, Carmen. Okay, a few other announcements. Hopefully everybody has Porch Fest on their schedule. That is September 16th, and really excited about that. I want to also say that I really appreciate Ben and the team's work to get Channel 5 online. That has been something that we have talked about since I've been on council, and so I am so excited that that has happened. I also wanted to mention that we got a couple calls about just some concerns, and I think it was related to like Riley honestly like highlighting Scott's role on Planning Commission, which was not the reason that he was at that meeting with Rick Perales. He had, I think, from what I understand, like connected with Carmen earlier in the day, and had realized that meeting was going to happen and asked if he could join. And yeah, I guess I just want to like remind folks, because I think since I got like concerns about what our rules are, that yeah, I would have done the same thing if somebody had asked me, can I join this meeting? I would have said, yeah, of course. But, we do have like folks on Planning Commission that are liaisons to the Active Transportation Advisory Committee and whatnot. But I just wanted to mention that highlighting his role on Planning Commission was not like the reason he was at that meeting. He was there as a citizen. And the last thing I wanted to mention was that I really hope that we can work with Antioch College on the transition related to property. I know a lot of things are happening really quickly, but I really appreciate Jane's comments that Antioch wants to be a good neighbor, and I think it would be great if we were having discussions around how those properties could like support our needs around housing and whatnot. So anyway.
Amen.
Okay, so those are announcements. Anything else before we move into the consent agenda? Okay, so first off, we've got the minutes from the last meeting, August 21st, 2023. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, and next up, we've got the credit card statement from July. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay, great.
And I also wanted to say I appreciate that all of the information is there on one sheet now, so we can tell what the expense was and what it was for. That's helpful.
Yeah, that is great. Okay. Yeah, and I think it's a good, great to mention that, we had not always approved our credit card statements, but I think it's a great move that we've done in the last 6 months. Okay, so review of the agenda. So I have 2 items I think that I need to ask to add. One is a resolution around check signatories, 2023-68. And then Judy, what was the other one?
The other is regarding a letter of intent that would go to AMP that basically
Oh, yeah.
gives the village a spot in a grant opportunity. It is non-binding.
Yep, the grant thing. Okay, so so the first would be legislation, the second would be new business. Everyone good with that? Okay. All right, then, yeah.
So you mentioned the Antioch thing and the announcements. Could we do like just 2 minutes on just talking about that? Doesn't
Yeah.
need to be a long conversation, but
I would like to do that. So, yeah, let's also add that to new business.
Under new business.
Okay. All right, anything else? Okay, then Kevin, I think petitions and communications.
All right, great. Thank you, Brian. Excuse me. The clerk has received a letter from Marian Stewart regarding parking on Dayton Street, a letter from Sharon Mohler regarding control of the deer population. Stephanie Goff, the Greene County engineer, sent a couple of correspondences regarding traffic calming. Jason Laveck has also a couple of correspondences regarding Fairfield traffic safety. Diane Diller, to echo Marian's announcement, has information regarding the mediation training that will be at the end of this month. And Greene County Public Health has information regarding the possibility of West Nile virus being prevalent in the area. And that is the extent of what the clerk has received for petitions and communications. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Kevin. All right, so I think we're going to move into legislation. And first up is, wow, these are all resolutions. All right, so Judy, Resolution 2023-65 by title only, please.
This is authorizing the finance director to retain at least $205,000 in the Green Space Fund through August 31st, 2024 for the Tecumseh Land Trust Natural Resources Conservation Partnership Program Grant.
Okay, can I get a motion?
I move.
Second.
Johnny, you want to?
This was Josue, so
Okay.
I'm going to defer.
All right, that's fair enough. Okay, so I think I'll kick this off, and I think that one of the things that we have appreciated about our relationship with the Tecumseh Land Trust is helping to identify properties that help protect our village. And again, the idea that we want to make sure that we sort of maintain the integrity of our village and our community. And, this was, I think this particular set aside for the Green Space Fund was related to a great opportunity to secure some federal funds to, make a big difference in what we can do to protect green space. I'm happy for Michelle to, kind of like say a few words related to why this is important for the village.
Sure.
And then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so Michelle Burns, Executive Director of Tecumseh Land Trust. Just to say that these funds would be used only on properties that the village has identified as priorities for protection. So we continue to follow the plan set by the village. It's a one-year extension to our grant that we will not have access to again. So this is the kind of the last year opportunity to use these funds. And just to say, we do have a property that has been identified by the village that could be in transition in the next 6 to 12 months. So this could be one of our final opportunities to use that Green Space Fund to protect that property.
All right. Thanks, Michelle.
Any questions? Yeah.
Yeah, questions? Yeah.
Not a question, really. If it were possible to show the map, that would be cool. I don't know if it is. It's in our packet. But at any rate, there are properties on the west side of Yellow Springs. The Jacoby Creek properties are one set of properties, which is where, what the grant was involved in. But then there are also the properties on the southeast side that are contiguous with our 1-year, 5-year, and what do they call it? Capture zone for our well field.
Correct.
So those are two different sets of properties on either side of the village. So I think it's just good for people to understand where those properties are.
And those properties, just to say, have been identified since the 60s and 70s and reaffirmed ever since we've done land use planning since then. So with some adjustments, to say, but.
Is the property that you're saying would be possibly up in 6 to 12 months, is it on the well field?
It's on the Jacoby, yeah,
It's in
Jacoby
the-
side.
okay.
Yep. Well, it's in your drinking water side, not necessarily your well field down low, but up higher.
It's the Jacoby, on the Jacoby Creek, the west side.
Right,
not
the west side.
Okay.
So the Jacoby and the Country Commons all kind of meet at the well field, so you're not down quite that low.
Okay.
You are in your Jacoby Creek drinking water protection zone.
Oh, okay.
And I'll ask a question, I don't know who can best answer this, but Michelle, you did say that this transaction could occur in 6 to 12 months, which is, or discussing and planning, presumably to do this extension for just 12 months.
Right.
What one thing needs to happen within that 12-month period, if the deal does not get closed by then? What one thing needs to happen to be able to qualify during this next 12 months?
Well, we need a commitment from the current landowners, which just transferred over into different ownership from the past landowners to do this. And so I think I said last time I was here that I had just recently reached back out to those folks as the current landowners to see if they were interested. And, we'd like to try to get a commitment here pretty soon, but at the same time, as much time as we have is better for them to make that decision.
Okay, great, all right, thank you.
So, hi, Michelle.
Hi.
Did you see the stuff in the packet? Did you see the memo? I'm just, basically, there are questions that Josue sort of posed. I wonder if you already know, you want to just go through them.
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't think I saw them.
That's okay. So, the question, and Carmen, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but I think you were asking this question that was in, anyway, the question here is whether the parcel lies within our designated 5-year time of travel zone. This determination is critical because any land in close proximity to our water source directly affects our community's water quality. So I guess I'm just, and I don't know if anybody, Johnny, if you know anything about this?
It does not.
Okay.
It is not.
Okay. So I don't know if there's anything more you want to say to that, or if anybody who's been on council longer, or if you, Johnny, I know you're new here, but does anybody have any, I don't know enough about why that matters to be, like, how much of a difference is that? Why is he bringing up that question?
The 5-year is the priority properties, and then they go out to a 10-year, and as you go out 10 years, it gets shallower. So it needs to be in a 1 to 5 and a 10. Priority properties were in the 5-year.
So it seems like it is in the 5-year.
No,
It's,
no, so we have this what do they call it? The wellfield capture zone, which, is sort of big and weird looking. And then there's the 1-year time of travel, red, 5-year here, this is the capture zone. The property in question is over in here. So, I mean, it's clear, you're clear why we would want to protect these?
Yeah, I understand. I just,
You want to know why we're trying to protect those, or?
sure,
I mean, it is the headwaters of the Jacoby Creek. We've protected the property right above it, which is where it starts, so this would be the next one. And then it flows into other protected property that obviously is already protected. So
Okay.
it's kind of the missing link between a couple different properties that all create the headwaters of the Jacoby Creek.
okay. Part of the reason I'm asking this is, we got a thing for our village manager before he left, the last village manager. asking these questions, and I don't understand the full context of why this is in here. And I'll also say, like, if you didn't see this before and you weren't asked these questions, then I'm sorry. And I guess I would just say, like, Johnnie, this is the kind of thing I'm hoping that we stop doing, that if we're going to communicate with our partners, then let's talk to them. Let's talk to them and ask before we put stuff in the packet. And so anyway, so this is, I'm just trying to understand what's in here. So then the other question that's related says, for each dollar we allocate from our local taxpayer funds for the property purchase, it's essential to understand how much additional funding will be leveraged via the grant TLT has secured. How much additional funding will be leveraged via the grant the TLT has secured?
Yeah, so the federal government will pay 50% of the appraised easement value. So my guess is for this particular property, it would appraise somewhere around $4,000 to $5,000 an acre for the easement value alone. So you can expect that the federal government's going to put in at least the same, if not up to $250,000 more. And we
Okay.
also have commitments from the Ohio Department of Agriculture to put money in. That's a whole different system of how they calculate what they will put in. But you could expect that they would put in at least $2,000 an acre.
Okay.
So we have different commitments from different places for these projects.
So what's the appraised value? Do we don't know?
Well, we don't know because we haven't done an appraisal recently in Miami Township, but I am guessing based on surrounding appraisals for properties that we've done recently, it would be about at least $4,000 an acre, could
Okay.
be up to $5,000.
So is it fair to say that it sounds like if the village puts in $205,000, that is helping to leverage that much or more likely?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
I think that was getting at the question. I'm just trying to, it was like we're given like a trail to follow or something by a person who's not here. And so I'm just trying to figure out.
I'm always
Why?
available to answer
Yeah, no, I don't know
questions.
why he didn't call you before. That's disappointing.
Well, but that being said, we had talked about, I think the last time that, Michelle, you came to talk to council, Gavin wasn't on council. And so.
At the beginning, right?
Right, because that was 7 months ago. And so I think that is something that we want to make happen, so.
Sure.
Okay.
I think I'm good with Michelle, but I have another
Yeah.
question for us too, yeah.
Okay.
So just to be clear, for people who were on council when this happened, it seems like there was an agreement that was made, there was like a deal that was struck around the 5-year piece, right? And then there was an extension of the I forget what it's called, the grant. And so am I understanding this correctly? It sounds like maybe there was a communication, like there's just a little hiccup in terms of there was an extension, but we didn't know about it and then now we're figuring it out. But that ultimately, for those of you who were on council before, does it feel like it is in keeping with the agreement that was made to extend? I'm just asking for people who were here before.
Yeah, I think it's in keeping with the spirit of the agreement, yeah.
Okay.
So I think there was a lack of clarity about the extension piece, but yeah, I think it's totally in keeping, so.
And so just for clarification, what is the end of the one-year extension?
The end of the one-year extension is the date that was on the contract that I sent you, Judy,
So it's-
August 31st, 2020.
Yeah.
And there are no more extensions after that.
Okay. And that's in the title of the resolution. So any other questions or comments? All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Right, okay.
Oh,
I imagined that Riley had a question. It was just my imagination.
all right.
It's a resolution, I mean, is this an appropriate time?
I mean, yeah, why not? I mean, we already passed it, so, yeah. But yeah, we can still have a question.
Just for verification. Hi, my name's Riley. I work for the newspaper.
Last names are always appreciated, Riley.
Riley Dixon.
Oh,
My name is
thank
Riley
you.
Dixon.
Okay, we got you.
I guess I just want to know, so this is, by moving this to the general fund, that means there will be $0 in the green space fund?
That's not what we're doing.
It's
We're
not
not
being moved.
moving it.
Yeah.
I guess
So-
that's entirely
so-
unclear.
Right, so right now, we're still maintaining the green space fund
Okay.
at the 2011-ish.
200.
Or 211-ish, or whatever that it is.
200,000 is the commitment plus 5,000 for technology. I mean, that's what's in the grant, so.
Okay.
But you are correct that there is another conversation happening, which is, do we, continue to keep that money in that green space fund? But
It seems like that's kind of what precipitated the conversation in the first place, that this money was just sitting there and it hadn't been touched for so long that something needs to be done with it.
That's, yes. That's exactly.
If I can interpret this correctly.
Yep, that's what our auditors told us, and that's also why we wanted to make sure we actually made a motion to, let the auditors know that that money is there for a reason. So,
Okay.
but yeah, we haven't made a decision about moving those funds yet.
Okay, that answers everything I had. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Riley. Okay, anything else? Okay, so I think we already voted on it, so we are going to move into Resolution 2023-66 by title only.
This is implementing an internal control policy to address the receipt and disposition of property and fines received in accordance with forfeiture statutes of the Ohio Revised Code, including Section 2925.03.
Can I get a motion?
I move.
Second.
All right. Yep. I was looking for the signals, so.
All right, so this is just kind of a little housekeeping issue more than anything. So we currently receive checks from the Mooney Court or Municipal Court in response to any trafficking, aggravated trafficking and drugs charges that have gone down based on mandatory drug fines. Now, we get those fines in return because the code, if you went through the entire thing, which is pages upon pages long, you'd find that it dictates that those monies have to be spent and accounted for in a very specific way. So in a roundabout way, that's cleaning this up, making sure that we have that policy, because right now, anytime we receive those checks, we send them back to pharmacy board, right? That's where we've had to send them back to the pharmacy board. So I have a few of those portions of the code highlighted if you're interested in reading it. If not, it's just essentially Ohio Revised Code says we have to have this, we're getting it. This is where we are today. So, questions?
Quite appropriate.
All right, super duper.
All right, thanks, Chief. All right. No questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, then let's do Resolution 2023-67 by title only.
This is accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor.
Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Amy Kemper.
Basically, this is housekeeping as well. The county auditor sends us a list every time this year, telling us what our expected revenues will be and what our levies will generate, and we have to have a motion from council that says we accept those rates moving forward. We currently have two levies, one levy with inside and outside millage that generates $1.2 million a year, and a 0.3 police pension levy that generates $51,000 a year. So that's the levy piece of the resolution. Do you have any questions?
Yes. I'm on the page where it says subdivision authorized rate, levy type, base year, last voted period.
Yes.
So I don't understand. Can you go through that page and explain it?
So she's on the page of the resolution, the Ohio Revised Code 5705 at the top. Basically, it says we have inside millage of 2.3 mils, which generates $390,000 a year. And then we have outside voted levy of 8.4 mils. That's a voted levy. That's base year was 2006, last voted in 2020, and it expires in 2025, which generates $834,000 for a total of 1.224 million. So that's skip the Greek numbers in the middle, that's basically, so he's telling us that we're going to generate $1.2 million and that we have a voted levy that we need to consider in 2025, renewing or not renewing, so.
How can we have a levy that's not voted, that 2 point?
Well, that's the inside millage.
Can you explain?
Don't get me on, inside and outside millage, you can, every entity can only have so many unvoted millage. And then you have to go to the county and ask for permission so that all the other people that are taxing the same people that we are aren't going, well, hey, we're going to have streets and we're going to have streets and you're going to have police and then we're going to have roads. So the county auditor determines how much inside and outside millage you're allowed to have. And they send us the numbers and then we go to them and say, wow, we really need more money. We need another outside levy. Can we be considered for that? Because you have a cap. And I'm not sure what the
So that 2.3, at some point, the village government just initiated that, and it was low enough that we didn't have to
Right.
vote it?
Yes, that's my understanding. Yeah.
And then what's the distinction between where it says total estimated value and, is it year to date? Is that what that is? Like the 174,000?
Tax year 2023.
Tax year 2023. I think it's a percentage of the total estimated value of the property. So 174 million, that's my guess. I don't know exactly. But it generates for us 2.3 mils of 174 million generates 390,000 for us.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And last piece of
Support is over,
legislation.
Johnny.
Yes.
Board's over. So you want to go home?
And last piece of legislation, 2023-68, we can do by title only.
Okay, this is approving check signing privileges for West Banco Bank, general checking and guaranteed deposits.
Can I get a motion?
Second.
All right. Judy, you want to explain, or, all right, Amy? Yeah.
With Josue's leaving and me going on vacation, honestly, at the end of this month, we want to make sure we have at least 2 to 3 people in the building that can sign because we have dual signatures on our checks. So we're adding Paige back as a signator at West Banco, which would be all 4 accounts.
Okay. All right. Any questions? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So we are going to move into citizen concerns. This is the time on the agenda where we welcome any comments up to 3 minutes for items that are not on the agenda. Marian?
You know me by name now.
And I think we've got some answers, so yeah, go ahead.
Good, because I was expecting an answer from last week about why the yellow line was there in front of Dayton Street for no parking. And
There were some things in the packet, but it was a little bit hard to decipher. But anyway, go ahead.
Okay, so when I came the first time, one of the council members, Marian, suggested I get a petition. And I have that, and I'd like to submit that to the board. It's from the neighbors on my block of Dayton, the 300 block to the north side. And I was quite pleased this week to see the Yellow Springs newspaper with a grid, a map of what you're doing, the planning for the bike path on Stafford, going out of town on Dayton. And part of that is to put curb bump outs at Stafford and Dayton, which is great, which is even more reason to put parking back behind the curb, the bump out, which will be there. So I would like for you to actually, in this plan, to redo all of Dayton Street to take the yellow line away from in front of my house and up to 10 feet from wherever the bump out is going to be, so that the visitors to this town can have parking again on Dayton Street. I can have parking on Dayton Street, and I trust that you will put a white line or other measures in there to dictate travel lanes versus a parking lane. And because first time it came, you suggested that Rebecca should come to speak also. Rebecca Party, she's my next door neighbor, so she's here too. Rebecca.
That's my cue. I think you all know me. So I live next to Marian, and I just wanted to provide a little bit of history that when she purchased the house and moved in, there was parking. I think there was like bits of yellow on the curb, but it had been used as parking for at least during that time that I remember. I moved in 2019. So I think that the other aspect, I mentioned it to Brian when we were walking on the street, is that currently with that long yellow stripe on the one side of the road and the other side it's completely yellow, and you're going up the hill, it creates kind of a tunneling effect. And I've also had people talk about how it makes it harder actually to see the curb, because that yellow is so bright. Your eyes are just on that. So my daughter, she had her car, she was parked on the side of the road, and she had it kind of scratched on the side, took out the side view mirror. Traffic's very fast on Dayton Street, particularly in the morning. I think that actually we know that if you have parking, if they see that it is a more residential street, it's just not a street that's dedicated to moving cars as quickly as possible, which is how it looks now. It would help with our overall attempt to slow that traffic down at that section, which is also a place of where school kids cross from Stafford across Dayton to get to Mills Lawn. So I also recommend changing that to make it a little less like this runway and to restore some parking back on the street. Thank you.
All right, thanks. So, I mean, it seems like we can just talk about this now because we're prepared to talk about it, so.
Okay. So I went back, I called Choice One Engineering, because I'm not an engineer. And I brought him out to the intersection to look at it. We also, in the packet, I have 2012 where it was painted yellow for the same distance, 2019 where it was painted the same distance. And so if you come from North Stafford to Dayton Street and you stop at the stop bar, which is your site, if you look to the left, you have 5 very large trees, and you cannot see if there's a car there or not. So if you park a car right there on the road in front of these addresses, it makes it even worse that you can't see oncoming traffic. So he gave me 2 recommendations. Leave it as it's painted, or take the trees down and make it to where we can park. And so we have the map in there. This is from Choice One Engineering, stating the reason why it is painted yellow and where he recommends it to stay yellow. So, and he is also one that helped do the safe routes to school for Mills Lawn, and he's done a lot of things in the village. So that is the reasoning why there's yellow curb there.
Okay. Council questions?
Well, I don't have anything right away, but,
Well, I mean,
yeah.
before Marian comes back up, yeah.
So just like, kind of as an aside, but relevant, how many cars have been hit on Dayton Street in the last 2 years?
That were parked on Dayton Street?
Yeah,
Half a dozen.
okay,
And that's obviously the spitballing here. But,
sure,
Mhm.
okay. And
Okay.
it's usually almost toward Enon, right? Like it's up on the western end?
No, I wouldn't say so. I would actually say it's closer to the, yeah,
Okay.
I would actually say it is closer to this one.
Okay.
Down over into here.
All right.
Also, at least, off the top of my head.
Page.
I'm sorry, yes.
Oh,
I thought I projected, but I can also think of at least 2 crashes, and I don't want to speak incorrectly here, but we're either at the High Street, Dayton Street, or the Stafford Street, Dayton Street intersection that were pretty awful when we had, and both of those were attributed to vehicles that were parked illegally on that area, so. And that was in the last 2 to 3 years. One specifically was on July 4th. I
because
remember
you
that.
can't see.
Yes, ma'am, yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so. Okay.
Okay.
So,
Marian?
that intersection, Stafford and Dayton, is it
Yes.
Stafford? Is going to have bump outs.
It-
And that bump out, am I correct, the bump out will actually allow a car to come out a little bit further? to see?
No, if you look on Stafford, I wish I'd sent you that bump out, Judy.
I got you.
Oh, did you get it?
I have it.
It's for Stafford.
I should have it, yeah.
The reason for the bump out is to slow cars coming in and also shorten the crosswalk. That is the reason for this one. That's Davis.
Sorry, my labeling leaves it. Keep talking.
The bump out, Marian, is not that significant to where it would allow for a car. But again, we're not changing the stop bar location on Stafford. It remains, it just shortens the crosswalk is the reason. So short of
Well, they help
short
with-
of cutting
they help
trees.
with traffic
They
calming.
do, they do. And that's the reason why we're putting them in, is for the safety. We're doing traffic calming bump outs at King Street, High Street, Stafford Street, Winter Street, and the bike path on Dayton, and the bike path on Xenia, and East Davis.
What
and
was the
West
one you
Davis.
just showed us, Judy?
That was Davis
Davis.
bump out.
Okay.
They're all
Are they all on
in a
that same?
stream somewhere. Maybe it is.
So just,
I mean, but you get the idea.
There's High.
there's High, keep on going
There's
down.
High.
That's King,
Okay. Xenia?
one more.
Oh, that's Xenia.
There's
Stafford.
Stafford.
Okay,
So you can see just, it comes out about 4 feet.
okay.
And it will make it to where people slow down because the lanes are not the north side is a lot wider than the south side of that intersection.
So where were you saying was the problem of visibility and where are the trees you were?
So if you're coming from Stafford, coming to Dayton Street, if you look to your left towards town,
Yeah,
there's 5 big trees there that you cannot see past.
Right here.
So, do I also understand correctly that from Rebecca's house down, like, street parking can happen?
Yes, from
on-
Rebecca's house
on
to
the
Winter
north
Street
side?
is still parking.
Okay.
well, I mean, like we just have, what was it called? I forget what the word is, but I go back and forth on that all the time. And mostly on my bike, sometimes on my car. I've never had a visibility problem coming south and looking east, I guess. I mean, I experienced the problem going north on High Street where Don Beard's is, and there are frequently big vehicles parked there. And I try to avoid that intersection because that's so dangerous. But I've never experienced the difficulty there, so that's my 2 cents.
Gavin?
So just so we're on the topic, I guess I want to like zoom out for a second. So how does this process, like how should it work? Like is this in terms of like communicating with residents, communicating with, like how did, I don't know, year and a half or whatever, we didn't ever have a thing like this come up. Was there just just, it was a disagreement, or was it a breakdown in the communication, or how did we, is this the way it ought to work?
Well, we were supposed to have these marked 2 years ago, and the contractor kept on putting us off, so I went to another contractor,
Yeah.
and he got double the work because we was 2 years behind. That is the reason for this. Plus, we have the Dayton Street project coming for the multimodal pass. So we wanted to highlight Dayton. At the same time, we was doing all the traffic calming things around town, trying to get people to slow down, trying to get intersections cleared out. That is the reason why we painted this yellow again.
Okay. But I mean, in terms of like communication with residents, is this like, there was just a breakdown in communication that got it to here? Is that, and when you speak, you could give us a sense. But I'm just hoping that going forward, when it just doesn't, like, I don't pretend to be an expert about how the traffic patterns ought to work. So I'm assuming these kind of things largely get worked out between residents and staff, and then it's only coming here if there's like, if something has broken down along the way that's led to it getting here.
We have marked all over the village, and that's the only one that's come up.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Carmen, were you going to say something?
Kind of. I mean, I think that when people have concerns, when residents have concerns, villagers, community members have concerns, it comes here. We're kind of the
Yep.
intermediary, right? And so we get letters, and then we bring that to staff, and then we work it out.
No, I was just trying to understand, we hadn't had anything like this, so I was just wondering, like, was it,
Like with
did something
traffic
happen?
specifically, or?
Yeah, like with these
Yeah.
kind of things, like the specifics of where.
I think the
signs-
last time actually was, there was a stop sign thing that came before
Yes.
you were on council.
Okay.
So it doesn't come up that often.
Yeah, I was just trying to understand.
Yep. So Marian, yeah.
So I appreciate you digging in and finding an answer. As far as knowing what was coming, I came home one day and it was bright yellow. That was my clue. None. So that's a conversation that the department had with the people who were immediately impacted. I also reached out to my real estate agent and I said, how does this value my house? She said, because there was no line that was visible when you moved in, it's assumed that it had street parking, and you have every right to be upset. She said if somebody were to buy it now, because it's yellow, they would not assume there was street parking. But because it was not marked when I moved in, November, December 2020, that it was assumed I had parking. I appreciate the visibility issue from Stafford, and I also greatly appreciate the bump outs and the bike path and the considerations there. I would be willing to, if you would consider, to add 2 spots for parking in front of my house closest to my driveway, in addition to replacing the 25-mile-per-hour speed limit sign that blew down just beside Rebecca's driveway in a storm last year that just got taken away. So the drivers don't know it's 25 unless they started way back. So there's some things that can be done in addition to paint a white line or parking areas, the little white things, to give drivers a clue that it's not a driving lane. Right now, there's no clue that you can't drive there, the whole strip. Sometimes Dayton Street North Side is almost empty of parking during the day. Sometimes it's packed. Drivers don't know. So if there's one car there, that's a problem. You need to mark the driving lane. But please consider adding 2 spots back in front of my house closest to my driveway, because you've got about 175 feet right now of no parking. And I've lived in cities everywhere. You can park right up to the curb. 5 feet, 8 feet, and 175 feet? Wow, that's a lot. And we have a lot of visitors to this town. Every festival, that street is packed. And I watch people exhausted walking even further. If I had more room, I'd put out chairs and give them lemonade, for the extra hike. But there's a lot more cars that could park there. But I would really ask for at least 2 spots to be added in front of my house closest to my driveway, which is basically shared with Rebecca's driveway. It's on the downtown side of my lot. So it's the least impacted by all of this.
Can I ask Johnnie a question?
Yes.
So I understand that over a period of time, the yellow just wore away. But there still was some
There
yellow
was.
up closer to the,
It's actually on her apron for the curb.
It's
Her
pretty,
driveway apron, there's a piece of the old yellow that's still visible.
it's pretty standard to have
just a
yellow
minute,
on
please,
driveway
please.
aprons. Yes, ma'am.
well, I'm talking to him, not you.
Thank you, Marian.
So was there yellow up closer to the corner? or
There
not?
was. It was hit and miss all up through there.
No. I mean, I was just going to suggest, I mean, I understand what she's saying, that she moved in and she didn't, you know, it wasn't visible. To put maybe allow one parking right by her driveway, would that make that much difference?
Considering the traffic calming that we've been trying to do and the safety of the village that we've been trying to do with roadways and cutting trees down on Polecat, I would advise against it. Engineer advises against it, but if we put it back, then we're going to have to take the trees down.
So I've heard that, take the trees down. I'm not that familiar with the area in terms of which trees. I think, excuse me, I would submit that we're a long way from where we are now to completely taking down.
Correct. No, you're
A
correct.
bunch of trees. I don't know if it can just be trimmed, the branches raised up. And I would like to submit that as we wrap this up and move on to the next chapter of this discussion, that we spend some time on site and try to figure out some compromise. I understand what the engineering says. I understand the need for a couple of spaces. I think there's somewhere between now and here in Nirvana that we can get to that makes sense, maintains traffic safety, doesn't clear out a whole forest worth of trees.
Correct.
You know, but I'd like for us to maybe spend some time on site and try to come up with something, or at the very least, have a complete understanding of why we are where we are.
Thank you, and I love the trees. Don't
Yeah,
cut-
yeah.
They're amazing trees. That's part of what makes it beautiful. I just want 2 parking spaces back.
Yeah.
All right, so 25 mile an hour sign back?
Yep.
Yeah.
25, okay.
Yeah.
And a white line. That helps
Well,
define where the driving
we're
lane is.
sign-
I
think
think it's
sign.
pretty important that we let the engineering folks determine what our roadways look like. That's pretty critical. And I think that if you're going to go contrary to the recommendation of an engineer, that be very carefully thought out, because we had a reverse situation where your engineer said, this is a perfectly safe crossing between a bike path and a road.
And it wasn't.
The call for it was, we'll make it safer because it's not safe enough. And then we have sort of this other perspective, which is, oh, well, couldn't we make it a little less safe and people could have some more parking? I think that the consistency comes from following the recommendations of your engineering department. That's their job.
I think council gets that. So Marianne, thank you. So I think what I will say, and you can go ahead and sit down, is, yeah, I think we should all be very uncomfortable, as Judy and Johnnie highlighted, to like go contrary to what the engineers say. But I do like the idea of, if we are carving out parking spots from in front of Rebecca's house on down, where my understanding the yellow line does not have to be.
Correct.
That I like the idea of, like, since we're gonna be doing more lining, like, you know, adding that. I think that is a great traffic calming, like, approach. And I guess I also have to say, like, there is a lot of on-street parking, like, pretty close by to all our houses. So I know that, you know, we all want to have, like, it right in front of our house, but I don't know. I mean, I think there's a way that we can, like, kind of balance that. And so, but yeah, Marianne, I mean, I guess I feel like we've talked about it a lot. I think that, you know, I want us to keep looking at, like, how we, you know, are responsive, but we did get feedback about, like, why, and it wasn't just like because we do this, you know, because we've always done this. I mean, we got, like, sight lines from the engineers that said there are safety concerns. So, so I think that's important to keep in mind. So anyway, so I don't know. Does anyone want to continue this conversation at this point? I mean, I think that, again, like, talk to Johnnie, if, and Marian, you can talk to our staff as well. All right, but I think we're going to,
One question. Was that before the pump out, before the plan? You talked to them, you said 2019 and 2020, the line was there,
It
and that's the ice comes in.
yeah, it was before.
it was actually just last week as well.
Yep. Okay, so we don't have special reports, but we do have a manager's report. So
That we do.
let's jump in.
That we do. Okay, some of it's mine, some of it's Josue's. So we will start, we've already done Dayton Street. Kevin, we reached out to NIC. They're getting us information. The information they got was not 100%. That's on the property maintenance piece of it. So we're going to get together and get some more information from them, and then we'll reach back out.
Okay,
So I just wanted to give you a follow-up on that.
thank you.
The next one I have is tree trimming. It's not a contract, but it's information that Ben Sparks and myself worked and put it together, and then Amy put her spinning touches and all the performance on it. Tree trimming, we have got one bid this year, the second time we put it out, and then it was $150,000, and we had budgeted less than that. Now, since then, the tree trimmer has went out of business. So we have literally reached out to other tree trimmers, and we have got bids from $150,000 to $310,000. Now, mind you, let me tell you another small story. We used to trim in 4 sections, but we brought it down to the communication lines, so we went to 5 sections to go with the water hydrant flushing and the water valve system. And along with the pole inspections, we're trying to get everything together. So the price should have come down, but instead the price went twice as much as what we've ever paid. So Ben and I challenged Ben, and Ben went out and looked at trucks. He looked at what it would take to have 2 tree trimmers. We went and gave the information to Amy Kemper. She put a performer together, and literally the first year would be a little bit more than what we normally spend, but it would be less than $300,000, and we would have the in-house. We'd have two people. We'd have our own truck. We already have chippers. We'd have to get some safety equipment. That would be a arborist on staff, tree trimmer, along with a helper. They would also be able to do streets in the alleys. So if we have a tree fall down across the street, we're not bringing in the street crew, we're bringing in the tree crew. So they would be split amongst multiple electric, water, streets, parks. Would be able to do a better job of maintaining our trees and the roadways and all that. So I know that Amy brought it to Finance Committee. I was late coming there. We suggested bringing it back here to get a feel for if it's something that we should go ahead and try to budget for. We'd like to secure the truck this year, if I'm not mistaken, Amy. It is not going to be a new truck. It is going to be a refurbished one that's not used, by the contractors, but we would take it over. So we do have a truck and the equipment of $84,900. And then we got some safety equipment for $2,000. We have 2 people in for staffing, maintenance of the equipment. Total is $243,664, still less than one contract for 1 year. Then going forward, it looks like the total cost would be $166 and $175 moving after the first year. And they'd be on staff.
So one thing I want to underscore is, we've talked a lot about clearing these sight lines and, thinking more about pedestrian and bicyclist safety. So that was an, interesting aspect to this proposal for me, is that we could, have that activity be a part of, what what is happening on a regular basis, so.
So what was the number for the estimates this year? Like one something?
150,000
Uh-huh.
to 310,000.
Okay.
Marian?
So an arborist, would that person have work all year, or would they be cross-trained to do some other things?
We have enough to keep them busy all year, but we also have a parks department, and they can help mow, they can help maintain the park streets. We would be able to utilize them like we do all the employees. But they would fall under the electric department, so to speak.
So
That's who
it
would
be
manage them.
Someone like Enoch or someone like that? I mean, someone who has that kind of
Yes.
skill?
Yes.
Gavin?
No, I mean, generally, if it seems like it's a financially viable, option, I'm totally fine with us having staff in-house to handle things. We can control costs that way. Obviously, I assume you've thought about all the things are we going to be able to staff it consistently? Are we going to be able to pay within the market, or, those kinds of things? And, the 150 to 300 is a pretty big range, and I understand it's cheaper the first year. Do you have a sense of, is the assumption that this crew would be able to do equal to the amount of work, or are you expecting it to be more or less than the amount of work that was in sort of that annual contract?
So the 150,000 to, and we only got one that was 150,000. The rest of them was 270 to 310. That was just for the tree contract. That was for line clearing for section 1 only. So that was literally for 3 months worth of work, because it had to be done in 3 months. So if we have it in-house, then we can do it daily, and then we won't have to do it. They'll be working all the time. They just be able to do more things. We can set aside sections, get it done. We'd be able to properly notify the homeowners. They'd be the village employees. We'd be able to work out better because we have 5 days to work out.
But just to be clear, when you think, so it was going to take them 3 months to do it, it'll take us 12 months to do the same amount, or we'll
It'd be
get more done?
We'll
in
get
that?
more done.
Yeah. So it seems like, especially in a village where we're concerned about trees because of our electric power supply, most notably, and then obviously the safety stuff that Brian mentioned too, I guess if it doesn't cost more money, if we can get more done
Correct.
for less money, that seems like a no-brainer to me.
Carmen, would you want to say anything?
No, it makes more sense I think it makes more sense for us to have as much as we can in-house, especially when it's going to be more cost-effective. And especially when if something happens, we don't have to call out. The response time is not even going to be an issue. If a tree's down, it's taken care of without having to call a third party.
So can we get more of those Y kind of shaped trees now, Johnny?
No.
We don't do that stuff.
No, they really don't, no.
I like the L tree.
That's the other electrical service that runs through the village.
So Amy B., should we vote on this, or,
You're making a decision tonight?
I don't know.
Yeah. Budget stuff.
I think what we brought the proposal to you guys for, so that we could put it in the budget for
Okay.
next year, so that when you vote on the budget, it'll be
Yeah.
included.
Do we want to try to secure the truck this year?
We
With-
can do a supplemental for that,
Okay.
yeah.
Can I ask what the rationale was for trying to get the truck this year? Not that I'm against.
It's available.
It's
Okay.
available, plus we can hit the ground running when we
Okay.
get staff.
Yeah. Well, to echo my colleagues' comments, I think it would be great for us to have easier and better access to these types of things. I haven't seen the street sweeper come by my house yet, but I'm sure it's a good idea.
It's close.
Okay.
I checked on it this morning, Kevin.
Okay, good.
They might take out some of the trees in the, anyway, but, all right.
Okay, so what else do I have in the manager's report? I'm sorry, but, that's done.
So
That's done.
did we decide we want to vote on this? Or?
No, we're
Or
not.
not.
It was,
It's going to come up in the budget.
Budget thing.
But I think at least we could not have a straw poll, but my sense is that
We all want it.
council is feeling positive.
Yeah.
Is there any council member that's not?
I get the impression that we're all positive.
I think that's what I have for right now.
Okay. Any other questions for Johnny? Yeah.
Yeah, so just, we don't even need to answer this necessarily, but these updates that I think were from Josue's things before, obviously, we read lots of pages and I skim stuff and miss it sometimes, but this time it just sort of set differently. So the gas aggregation piece, is this just, like, is this, Johnny, maybe you could just bring this up in your next report, this idea that we were working with SOPEC, but now we're doing it as the village, just would be interested in hearing more about how that's going or why we did that. And then the broadband update, we're in a new administration now, and I think this has been slow moving for quite some time. And I would just be interested, again, this doesn't have to be the next update, just sometime over the next month or two as you're getting getting things settled, to have a more substantive update about how you feel about how things are going with broadband.
Yeah, and related to that, Kevin and I are having our first check-in with Johnny next week. And then my plan is Marian in October, Gavin in November, Carmen in December. And right in that kind of between our first and second meetings. So, okay. Anything else for Johnny?
Good.
Okay.
Welcome aboard, Johnny.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so I think actually, as we move into old business, I guess traffic safety is also yours.
That one is mine. Now, again, the report was not done by me, but I can tell you what we've been doing, and Paige is here to help me as well. We've done a lot, and we still have more to go. It's his report in this one, too. Let me just tell you from I can tell you from the public works side, we have done a lot of vegetation clearing of the right-of-ways. We have removed signs that was not necessary. We've enhanced the signs that are necessary. We've also, this is a picture of Walnut. If you know where the bamboo is on Walnut and it's overgrown into the road, we have to keep mowing it back. So this will actually go all the way up to the road and fall out into the road during a heavy snow. And then we did the same thing. If you go to the next picture, you'll see we did the same thing on Fair Acres, where it was all the way up against, Far Hills. It was all the way up against the road. So we bought an attachment to go onto one of our track hose, and it can actually mow it back, and then we'll pick up the brush and put it in a chipper and get rid of it as well that way. So we have cleared the line of sight by polecat underneath the power lines. We've actually went even further. We've mowed, this is after it's been cleared. You can see we actually went ahead and mowed it, dug out all the stumps so they don't return, and made it to where you can see about 150 feet back off the roadway. That was before, and then the other picture was after. We are right now trying to get a price on thermal rumble strips to where we can lay them down versus grind into the blacktop. That way, if we get a lot of complaints and people don't like them, we can go out there and we can water blast the thermal off versus trying to fix the roadway. So we're actively trying to do things. We've highlighted a bunch of roadway. We've worked with ODOT on the safety grant to have traffic calming bump outs to shorten our crosswalks. There is 3 sets of rapid flashing beacons going in on that property, on the project. One at Xenia Avenue at the bike path, one at Dayton Street at the bike path, and one at Winter Street on the safe routes to school. Crossing Dayton Street, there'll be a rapid flashing beacons there. This is King Street. You can see that basically they're narrowing it down to where it slows people. It's not a super speedway down there through there. And I say this ahead of schedule, but we could probably do the same thing in the future at Kenneth Hamilton and Limestone if we see that it's not slowing them down fast enough. The other thing that we had talked about doing after this project is complete is updating the speed limit signs coming into the village to lower them, and we can do the same thing. We could possibly put the thermal rumble strips down there. Paige, do you want to talk about what you've done?
All right, so I think you guys received in your last packet, maybe that wasn't the last packet, but the updated details for traffic details overall in the village. So we are currently sitting at around 241 total traffic details, 169 traffic stops. That's from the enforcement perspective. So we were, one of the projects that kind of, I'm not going to say lost in translation, but Josue was working with Stephanie Goff, so I believe you're picking that conversation back up for those speed studies that we were waiting to get. I think that data that we received from that in combination with the data that we currently receive, I would say probably at least monthly from Joe Ayers, the speed radar that he leaves over on areas where we get complaints, utilizing that to really figure out, continue working on what days of the week, what time frames are the worst. We have also been having internal discussions about either week-long or specific days of the week that you guys have heard of, kind of DUI checkpoints. It would be very similar, except it would be a zero-tolerance day or a zero-tolerance week that went unannounced, and those were timeframes throughout the year that we could dedicate all the resources that we had, even if we did have to, in those circumstances, even call in more resources and dedicate all that time to enforcement where there would be a zero tolerance during those timeframes. So, questions for me?
Yeah, so a couple things. So I guess first of all, really appreciated the analysis.
Sure.
One of the things I did not see was, at least in what you put in writing, was like upping the enforcement piece. And so I guess I just wanted to understand what you were thinking there.
So the truth is, there's not much else we can do. So at this point, we have put as many resources as we have available, when we have available, out there. Running with a single officer on, they go out there whenever they have the time, they run the detail. Usually when they're out there, without fail, they get pulled off of it. So, so long as I'm running with single officer, there's not much else I can do from a resource standpoint, so.
Okay.
But as
and-
far as enforcement goes, I mean, they have the same direction that they've always had it since I've been in charge, which is if your discretion deems that this is something that requires a citation, if it's in line with our village guidelines on policing, and if it is
So I guess that is kind
progressive
of my,
enforcement,
like,
yeah.
where I want to get to
Sure.
is, does council need to be clearer that we want citations issued? Is that? I
Be
mean,
more
is that-
specific, what do you mean?
I mean, because I know we've had a history of like saying we don't want any stops and,
Oh, sure, okay.
whatnot, so.
So you're asking if there's any confusion about, no, there's
Yeah.
no confusion with the team on that. They understand that, yeah, if they see a violation that warrants a citation, they will issue a citation.
Okay.
Yep.
So can I just make sure we're on the same page?
Sure.
Because I feel like I've heard different people say different things. So this is super clear. I just want to make sure we're all hearing the same thing. There is, and especially as a new council member, some of these things happened before I was here. So there is sometimes it's brought up as though there was like a don't ticket people, and so then the police don't ticket people. So I just want to be clear. You're ticketing people when they do something that's breaking the law, and you're doing enforcement as much as is available based on current staffing.
Yes.
And so there's not something that could change where council would say, wait a minute, now we want you to ticket when we didn't want you to before. You're already ticketing.
When the situation calls for it, yes.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I think what I think you're referring to, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that we're not doing stops for a missing tail light.
Oh, no, so you're referring to
Right.
Doing
a previous memo that was issued by Chief Carlson, my predecessor, that was referencing pretextual stops. It was in regards to equipment violations. That wasn't
Right.
necessarily moving violations, which are more safety related. That memo was specific to equipment violations, loud muffler, rearview mirror, those types of things. That memo has not been rescinded. That still
So
exists.
that's the distinction.
Yes.
Is that?
Yeah, no, so that's good to no,
Okay.
that's exactly what I think we need to clarify,
Okay,
because
yeah, good.
we got some suggestion that maybe citations weren't being issued because we had sent mixed signals, and so.
Oh,
Excuse me, sorry about that. So, Chief, you mentioned the zero tolerance days or weeks.
sure.
I mean, what would change?
Well, on a zero tolerance day, essentially what we'd be saying to those officers that are working is, hey, today, it doesn't matter if it's 26 or if it's 55, it's a zero tolerance day, you're getting a citation.
Yeah.
Whereas right now, there is a level of discretion for each of the officers based on what the situation warrants, because things are different. I mean, it might be unpopular to say, but somebody going, 31 miles an hour through a 25 at 2 in the morning when there's nobody on the roadway, there's nothing going on, that driver has no history. That's something that an officer would consider from a discretion standpoint versus 2 o'clock in the afternoon when kids are walking in that area where people are traveling on their bikes. Those are factors that you have to consider when you're deciding whether you're going to issue a citation or a warning. On a zero tolerance day, those factors wouldn't be considered.
Okay.
So, one of the things that, has come up in relation to this is that if you drive into Bellbrook or Oakwood, you know that you better not speed. And that's not the attitude in for Yellow Springs.
Not anymore.
Right, right, yeah, it
There
used
were-
to be.
Yeah,
right,
not
exactly.
very long ago.
So I was concerned about hearing that, and then the other thing I guess is intriguing to me is just related to the people power piece. And so I guess I'd like to hear what your attitude is on speed cams, because honestly, I'd be happy to hand back some of that local government fund money if it meant more safety. But I want to understand what your perspective is.
So I've actually done just a little bit of digging. I didn't want to put too much work into it until I knew what the direction from council was on the matter. But I did reach out to another chief. Locally, it's a stretch. It's a little small place called Lindale, and so it's very hard to find a place that's just like Yellow Springs. And this place does have a major, I believe it's a highway, right? 71, is that what we discussed? Running through it, so that makes it considerably different. I just want to be transparent about that. But did speak with that chief, very small village. They decided to put them in place about 10 years ago. And so he worked with a vendor, and forgive me, I don't know it off the top of my head, but from my conversation with him, it's pretty clear that depending on the vendor you go through, it can be somewhat of a headache, or it can be no work at all, and the vendor takes care of everything, down to a speed study prior to, if that's something that the community, years ago, the speed study was a requirement as a part of putting them up. Now it's not. It could be just something they include, but they would do that as a part of you working with that vendor to say, here's where they would be the most beneficial based on these speed studies, and here's where we could put them. You can have conversations around stationary versus handheld. It's my understanding that stationary is better because handheld, you run into the same problems, resources, still having to have an officer present type of situation. So as far as my opinion, I'm neutral on the matter. I want to do what's best for the community, what does actually make a difference from a safety standpoint. My question to him at the end of our conversation was, so what was the main reason you did it, and did it fix it? He said the main reason was yearly they had 1 to 2 very serious crashes up to fatalities. They put them in. They've had 0 every year since they put them in.
On fatalities on,
The specific stretch of roadway that he was concerned about in that time frame.
did that
So,
have anything to do with on or off ramps onto 71, or was it?
I'm not sure. He
Okay.
didn't share that. It was,
That would
so.
be, that would kind of be a determining factor. Are we talking about fatalities or near fatalities on a highway? Are we talking about arterial, streets? So
Sure.
that'd be a question.
Yeah. Yeah, he left it open-ended that I could follow up with him at any time, so,
Great. That's really good feedback. Thank you.
no problem. Did I miss anything that we, no, okay.
One, I just want to follow up. Excuse me, Johnny, you started off in some of the work from a public works perspective, and you mentioned tree trimming in the right-of-way. When I first saw some of the photos, the question I had was, at what point does a need for tree trimming of hedges get into private property?
When we
With a
go-
safety perspective.
That's when Meg comes in, and Meg will issue those citations and tell them, because some of it is outside of our right-of-way. And especially at Fair Acres, it was in the side yard that was preventing people to look onto Fairfield. So she issued a warning, and they cut it down. One thing that I didn't mention, I'm meeting with Choice One again next week. I've had a call with Tom Mazza from ODOT, and Fairfield qualifies for a special program that they have in January. It's a grant, but it's not as painful as the full grant. It's kind of their local money. It does meet the qualifications as a collector coming into the village, and it's for missing sidewalks. So we are talking with Choice One. He's got to do a little bit of data sheet for us to be able to submit that in January to try to get a sidewalk from Fair Acres all the way to Ridgecrest on Fairfield.
So one of the
So-
things, I'm sorry, John.
Go ahead.
Stephanie Goff did, I mean, it's been a,
So
she,
she did mention that, and what
Yeah.
happened is I wasn't looped in until 3
Right.
months.
okay,
And so when I finally got a hold of Tom, he's like, yeah, this is the program. He didn't think it qualified at the beginning, but then he looked at the map, and he goes, oh, no, you're a perfect candidate.
okay, excellent.
So I looped in Choice One. We're meeting about it on the 11th of
Okay.
September.
So this is county or MVRCC?
This is ODOT. This is
ODOT.
ODOT funding.
Okay.
That's
So-
great.
So we would know, we would literally know by the end of January whether or not we got that funding.
Excellent.
Good.
I really appreciate all the work that staff has been doing on safety, the research, and I really appreciate it. And I was going to ask about Fairfield, because it seems like most of the bump outs we're talking about, everything's on Dayton. So that is really cool. Thank you.
Right.
I'd be remiss
Because
if I-
we got that $2 million grant, but yeah.
Correct.
I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize one of my officers, and Channel 5's Ben here, who had a wonderful production for a bike safety video they worked together on. If you haven't seen it, give it a watch. It's 5 minutes. It's wonderful.
Who's the
So-
officer? Shout him
Officer
out.
Doug Andrus.
Okay.
Yep. You'll hear a familiar voice speaking overhead as well, but Officer Andrus even wrote the script for me. So please, thank you. Good
That's
for him.
cool. The voice of God.
Thanks for highlighting that. Yeah, and I want to underscore, like, I really appreciate it. I thought the memo was great. I think, we're all working, like, seriously on this. And, yeah, I've really appreciated council members' involvement. Carmen, you've done some great outreach. And so, yep, thank you. Okay, so, shared dispatch. I guess, Chief, you're back up.
This one's brief. Essentially, the update is that we are in a bit of a holding pattern. So we have gotten all the firm financials put together for the project, and we sent that over, and that includes the cost of personnel and equipment that would be needed to move forward with an expansion and take on Cedarville University in Jamestown. We presented those figures to them 2 weeks ago, I want to say. We're going on that. And a combination of other factors with those entities, they're weighing the options right now, and so we're in a holding pattern until we hear back from them on exactly what we need to do to move forward, if we're moving forward at all. So the next thing you'll see from me will either be we are not moving forward, or it'll be a very formal memo / possibly resolution or MOU with all the details complete in that. So no news is good news, maybe?
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, and then event sponsorship process. Carmen, do you want to kind of kick off? We had that stakeholder meeting, and just maybe talk about your impressions from that. And
Sure. So that meeting was the 31st, right?
Yep.
We had a stakeholder meeting, so it was myself, Brian, Amy Kemper, Johnnie, Alex from Mills Park. We had representatives from the Chamber of Commerce, also from Art on the Lawn. So kind of my general takeaway from, there's kind of a two-prong thing here. First, having budgets established and presented to the village so that we have kind of a working ballpark figure of the cost of each event before the events take place. And I know there was some concern with having such a short period of time in order to get the budgets together. And, it's really important that we just need a ballpark. And everybody that's doing an event, especially one like Pride or Street Fair, you have, historical knowledge of how much stuff kind of costs. And so you're able to get stuff together, a ballpark budget, and give it over to council so that we can put it in the budget
Yep. Yep.
instead of last minute kind of scrambling.
Yes. So I'll bounce off of that to say that I think where we landed is that based on what we learned this year, Amy Kemper is going to be budgeting for events in that regard. We had talked about whether we were going to vote on the event sponsorship policy tonight, but decided that it probably makes sense because we have an event the event committee, that's talking about just what the costs are, meeting, I think it's next week.
Yeah.
And that it probably makes sense to bring that all together in one package so that our event organizers understand what we're estimating the cost to be. Again, we want to continue to have that stakeholder feedback. I thought that was a great interaction. I hope that, Mark and others felt that way. I think Carmen and I definitely did, as well as the team. And so anyway, so we want to kind of bring that back as one package. But I think in the short term, in terms of budgeting, we've got some numbers. We know, what the range is, and I think that's where we're going to go.
So I said two-prong. The second prong
Yes.
is the Rita stuff.
Yes.
Which is a separate conversation. So right now, we're just talking about, hey, everybody get your numbers in so that we can put it in the budget, and then we'll have a separate and more detailed conversation about Rita.
Yep. I think that's a good.
Amy?
The vendor fee, is that what?
Well, so I think it's both the vendor fees and also just kind of how we elevate the Rita expectations, and then how much effort is put into that, if any. Yeah.
Right, we're mostly talking budget. So instead of January, February, March, people bring in their sheets of paper in and asking for $5,000 or $10,000, we're going to do it ahead of time. And then when they need their money, we just open a PO, it's already been approved.
Yeah.
It'll save some chatter at council, I think. No, my question was, Carmen saying we're going to have people fill out paperwork, is that what I heard? But I heard Brian say not yet.
I didn't,
Not yet. Is that?
no, budgets, people need to be thinking about their budgets. I haven't said anything about anybody filling
Okay.
anything out yet.
Okay.
People need to be thinking about their budgets so that they can submit it to you when the time comes. Nobody come here with anything for Amy Kemper, because it's going to be on me and I did not do it. So I'm just going to be thinking about what your money looks like so that when the time comes, you'll be able to submit that
So
to
don't
Amy.
write anything down.
Not yet.
Fill out the form, leave it blank.
Right.
Okay, thank you. I just want clarity.
Yep.
Because I think we left the stakeholders meeting with them saying, yeah, we'll fill it out, what do you need us to do? And I think maybe the stakeholders need to know, put a pin in it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have a little bit of time.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, Mark, come on up.
I was going to cover this under citizens' concerns as well, but this is perfect timing. I want to say I really appreciate the amount of collaborative meeting that has happened with the village and our event stakeholders. Not only that was an amazing meeting last Thursday, guys. I'm very serious. It was the first time that I'm aware of that all of the event stakeholders have been in the same room ever.
Thanks, Gavin.
So I really do appreciate that. Marianne, I want to thank you and Riley for coming on behalf of the Environmental Commission to talk with the Chamber, to talk about it, to come up with some constructive ways, and to start working on a pathway towards a zero waste street fair program, and hopefully that will also propagate into other events as well. So I just want to say I really do appreciate the amount of collaboration that council has shown us in the last month. It's been amazing. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. And that is our path forward. We want to think about with all of these issues how we have those stakeholder meetings. So yeah, we're gonna keep that going.
So,
Yeah.
that's great to hear. So just a specific question, so this, I know we're doing it officially, it sounds like maybe the next meeting or something, but this, like the sponsorship stuff, did you all share this document with?
Yeah.
So everybody knows
Yeah.
that they should provide feedback if they have it, and.
Right.
Okay.
So, and the feedback we got was positive.
Okay.
There wasn't, it didn't sound like there were any like major issues. We are tweaking the application form and whatnot. But yeah, so definitely. Okay. Anything else? Okay, then we are moving into new business. And Johnnie,
That's me.
yes.
So we
Start,
have-
stop, continue, pause. Yes.
Correct. So I am open to go down the list, or I could just take
The whole list?
questions and concerns.
The whole thing?
I mean, I guess, I don't think we have to go down
No.
every item, but
Right.
I have a list of
Okay.
questions
Alright.
that maybe I'll start with.
Okay.
Okay, so, BFA designation, is that bicycle-friendly community? That's towards the end.
Well, that's the reason why it's left blank, because it was put on the list and nobody has a clue.
Okay. I think that's bicycle-friendly community
Okay.
designation,
Well, we
so,
continue that.
okay, cool.
Yeah.
And I will say, like, to me, that's an item where it doesn't really require any, like,
Correct.
staff, like, that's, the folks that have done it in the past, like Chris Bongiorno and whoever. So, the next one was, does closing down the pool mean just for the season?
It does for the season and
Okay.
then make it does. It does. It does.
All right.
Just for the season.
All right.
I would've said something.
Just wanted to, yeah.
There's too many people in this room. I'll talk afterward. No. No, seriously,
Okay, all right.
It's just for the season.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that's what we were talking about. And then, I don't know, maybe those, I'm sorry. I'm worried about like website upgrade being, what do we put that on? Is that a pause or a stop?
We put it on a pause, I believe.
Okay.
Let me find it.
It's a pause.
It's on the last page.
It is on a pause. We actually talked about that in staff this morning. It was started, stopped, but out of the 6 of us, 7 of us as in staff, it's like, we have to keep doing something. So we are actively looking to see if it's more budget for next year to
Okay.
get something new going, but we're.
So that one I
we're gonna
wanted to
do it.
flag because I think it's also, and this kind of relates to, Gavin's mentioned this as well, just our community communications piece and the fact that like nobody can like search and find anything like on our website. So I guess I'd like to consider like budget for like a group that just runs us through the exercise and does it all, and it requires like a little bit of our time, like on the staff level to like talk about what we need, but it doesn't create a lot of, staff time otherwise.
Okay.
So that was one that just, I guess I flagged. So I think those were my main things. Anyone else?
Yeah,
Marian?
I'd like to look at the stop things, and some of them I just would like to know what it is. Like GAAP conversion, what's that?
That is a different way of accounting.
Okay.
We talked
that's
about
it.
this in Finance Committee. It's like an increased set of accounting standards that there had been discussion about doing in the past, but we reviewed it with the auditor at the last meeting. Anyway, go ahead, Amy. Sorry.
No, it's generally accepted accounting principles. We're cash basis, meaning
Right.
if the money
Yes.
comes in the door, we get it.
Yes.
And this would be setting up receivables, putting all our assets on the books, all their trucks and things like that. And it's unusual for a village our size to do GAAP, actually.
Oh.
Even the auditors are like, it's really expensive, too, because there's a lot of higher standards and a lot of more
Yeah.
testing that happens, right? So it's not in my,
So it's not, it's stopping not because of staff change, but because you think the practice, we don't really want to
right,
do
we
it.
talked to the auditors a great deal when they came into the Finance Committee meeting, and they really, Bryce in particular said, you guys, you don't need to do this.
Okay.
It's a nice thing. I mean, it's like icing on the cake kind of thing, but I don't think that's where we are. I think there's some other things we can do first.
Thank you.
The one reason it came up was if we were receiving like a heavy amount of federal grants, that it would be a good thing for us to have, but that's not happening, so.
Okay.
Not over the threshold, at least, yeah.
Thank you. Then the Tower Point and American Tower proposal, what are,
Those are the proposals that keep on coming to us year after year. Kevin, if you remember, they was down way low, and they keep adding.
by the,
Amy, the buyouts, correct. So
Okay.
Right.
Amy would,
I did the present value of money, and if we were going to take the money that they gave us and just set it aside and never touch it, we'd be okay, but not great. So they're not offering us anything fantastic. I told Johnnie the one caution we should have is the relevancy of those towers and how long we think that technology is going to be what people need before they bury it or, I don't know, set up satellites or whatever. So we have two proposals, and we've kind of just backburnered both of them because they don't, net present value of money don't make a lot of sense quite yet. So I'm sure they'll come back in 6 more months and maybe give us a
6
different
months to a
number that
year,
makes
they'll be
more.
back. So then they'll be back on the list.
and Yellow Springs Marketing?
That is something that Josue was working on, and he wanted to continue it through the Dayton Business Journal, and I'm sorry, but Mark left, but he was also wanting to reach out to the chamber to see if they could do more marketing
Yeah.
at YSDC.
And I feel like, that like rolls into the DC stuff, so that's why
Yes.
I noted that, but since we're like moving forward with our collaboration with the DC, I
Correct.
think that's, I think that makes sense.
And, okay, thank you. And the Vernay project, what part of that is?
Yeah, what is that?
That is not the part that's not the remediation. It was the future planning of what can go on to DC
I see.
or on the Vernays, which does need to stop for a while. But the remediation, we need to pick up and continue that.
Okay, thank you. The building department, Jamestown, were we talking about?
They had approached Josue about us taking them over as a building department. And as of right now, that is all on hold. We don't have the staff to be able to handle that at this time. And it was kind of in the same with dispatch at the same time. So we're at a holding pattern on it.
And the TLT conservation easements?
I will have to get with Michelle and figure out what all that's about. And I think Meg had a meeting with Michelle as well, and they did talk about some of that as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure what he means when he says stop. I mean, I don't know why he doesn't make that stop on here. My understanding is
It's on continue.
we are going to continue to work with them, be good partners, and
Who made up this chart?
We did it during staff one day.
Yeah, look, some of this way input too. Available for edit.
What about the Habitat Fisher piece and the glass farm stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, we originally, when we started just kind of brainstorming everything that we're working on, but we don't have too much, so I think that's part of why it's a little bit like kind of disjointed, but it's coming together more and more, so I think just having your input really helps. So
What's coming together?
This list is what we're working on.
Oh,
The Habitat Fisher is, it's conversation, but it's more towards housing committee.
Sure, gotcha, okay.
the PACE financing, why is that stopped?
That is again, Amy Blankenship.
I was gonna make it go home meeting.
Nope.
No, ma'am.
Property assessed clean energy is what PACE stands for.
Yeah, I know what it is.
You know what it is, okay, so it is something that the village would pass the legislation to assess a property, and the developer of that property would be using that money to finance clean energy or certain types of improvements on the property that meet the
Right.
standards.
And you know we did pass the initial legislation,
I did
right?
not know that. You passed.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
When? That would have been,
A couple years
2
ago?
years ago?
no, that's
Yeah.
news to me. I think.
So, I mean, to me, like, it didn't bother me because, I mean, if we're not actively promoting it, that's, fine. But we do have the, like, tools in place, apparently.
And when we
Okay.
did pass it, there was a potential project.
Yeah.
but
It was
I don't know what
actually,
happened to it.
yeah, it was actually the brewery. So,
Interesting. No, I did not know that. Josue and I had a couple of conversations about it. Bricker Graydon is very heavily in the PACE financing world, so if we wanted to have further conversations, it's easy enough to set up.
yeah. I mean, that's why I kind of thought like that one, and then also like with, the TLT stuff, I guess I just thought like it was paused in the sense that we're not changing the status quo. But we did like.
Yeah, because it's important. So, I mean,
Yeah.
when I say read stop, I think, oh, we're not going to do PACE financing if
Okay.
the opportunity.
If somebody's
That's
ready
not
to
what
do it, I think
Correct.
we would do it,
So-
right?
So let me explain the list. The list is, it's stopped, but it's not forgotten. We just don't have the staff at
The
this time
capacity.
Yeah.
to continue on projects that need to be stopped for a little bit.
Okay.
We can pick these up at any time, but we have to prioritize. So
Okay.
that is, just because it's on the stop list doesn't mean that we're never
No
talking
way.
about it again.
Well, that's helpful to know. Thank you.
Yeah. Gavin?
So like, Johnny, if you don't mind me sharing, that one example that he gave when I asked him about this was like the annual report is on the stop list. It's not that we don't want to do an annual report, it's just that he came on starting in September and the annual report's not done for
Right.
'22. So let's just give it up for this year and start it and do it on time next year. Is that accurate?
Absolutely.
Okay, so the only question I had, I brought this up as an agenda item, just because I feel like it's a healthy thing for us to communicate about how many projects we have going.
Correct.
I know one of the first things that happened when I started on council was there was like I can't remember what the exact name was, but it was like a council staff retreat where there was a bunch of frustration shared about essentially overwork. And so part of this to me is like feels super healthy, because what I'm hoping is that we get to a point where this is a great place to work, where people don't have to work unreasonable hours, and that means we have to say no to things. So I just want to say, like, I very much support us getting our capacity in line with our, having our staff capacity in line with the number of projects we do. I also think that reflects my interest in seeing higher quality projects that we do, so that we end up with less issues of communication, less issues of frustration with stakeholders. And I think that means you do less things and you go slower so that you do them at a higher quality. So the only question that I had was, are there any of these items that are causing particular heartache or challenge for you or the staff that we should be aware of?
None that I'm aware of. You can speak for yourselves.
I think we can think about it, right?
Okay, well, that could be
Yeah.
like, that could be
We
a
can
follow-up.
follow up. It's-
Yeah, I appreciated the list. It makes a lot of sense to me. So, uh-oh. Amy, you thinking about something? Okay.
Talking about dinner.
Oh, see? All right, well, we don't want to delay that for too much longer. Okay,
Oh, Riley?
yeah, Riley.
Ask a question.
Of course, come on up.
I'm gonna take a gamble on this one. I think I know the answer. You have YSDC property acquisition on there. Can I ask what has been acquired or what is being acquisitioned?
Again, that was put on the list and have no information on it.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, I probably need to dig some of that up, but for example, like, so I'm guessing Josue put it on the list. The parking lot that got sold was something that was on our radar, and we had hoped that Antioch was going to work with us on that rather than sell it to the highest bidder. So there are properties like that were in the mix. I could find like where Josue did a presentation, it was about a year ago, of like properties that could be strategic in that regard. That was one, that was an example, yeah, so.
Mr. Stokes, I know you're on YSDC. Have they talked about any particular property that y'all are looking to acquire?
I'm not at liberty to discuss any property that's been considered as an employee of Antioch College.
Maybe you should talk to whoever the chair of the YSDC is.
And Carmen's also
I am
on the
also on
YSDC.
YSDC.
But nothing has been acquired.
Nothing has been acquired.
Just looking for the right tense. Thank you.
But again, we did think, the DC would be a great partner for some of those strategic properties, so, yeah, and I am happy to like look at what some of those were. Okay, anything else?
One thing that I failed to mention during my manager's report, and it's on the list, is water tower ×2. Just so everybody knows, the water tower went back online today. It's not fully up and operating, but we're filling it slowly so we don't drain the other towers. So hopefully within about 10 days, we'll be back up with the water tower being complete, and then we'll start the second one next year.
Great. Well, I didn't hear any major complaints.
Nope.
So,
And we had a big fire.
yep.
So we put the system to a test, that's for
Yep,
sure.
definitely.
Worst case scenario when it happened,
Nice.
so.
Okay, so next we have a work session discussion. And so I know there was some interest in having a work session today. We didn't get that together. But yeah, I think that this was on the agenda to see if there is something that we want to drill down on. And I don't know if that's like start-stop stuff, if it's housing stuff, but yeah.
I mean, I don't, excuse me, I don't know if there's any subject matter that bubbles to the top right now. I trust the staff in their designation of the stop-start list. But with respect to timing, since Judy's done a lot of work to get the budget meeting sessions scheduled, I would submit that from a timing perspective, that if we do want to meet, it can be either at the front or tail end of one of these previously scheduled meetings.
Okay. Carmen?
I'm going to echo your sentiments. I think that's a good, yeah.
Okay.
I think that could work.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially if we feel like we need to drill down on the event stuff or whatever. Okay, so that's, Gavin, you have anything to add to that, or? Okay, cool. Okay, Marianne, so
Yeah,
housing.
yeah, thank you. So I've been interested in, for a while, in what does it take for different groups to be able to work together on a difficult issue that the different groups are interested in. And so while we were having our break from our last council meeting to this council meeting, I happened upon a webinar that I attended and thought, oh, this is sort of interesting. And I thought of housing in Yellow Springs as being one of those difficult issues that a lot of different organizations are interested in and have different resources to offer, but so far there has not been a lot of collaboration around it. So because this organization that had this 1-hour webinar was offering a year-long training, and you could attend the first training informational session for free, I invited a number of people from different organizations to attend the training to see if there was interest. And so Kevin Stokes is one of the people, and Meg and Susan Stiles from Planning Commission were the other people from the village government, but Tecumseh Land Trust and Lisa Abel from the YSDC. And so there were, I think, about 13 people all together that were sort of involved in this group. Not everyone attended that introductory session. After the session, there was a consensus, I think, that people didn't feel it would be appropriate for Yellow Springs to do that. But in the process of getting together on a Zoom meeting, as well as answering some questions, people, I think, did express an interest in collaborating if there's a project to collaborate on. People are very tired of just talking about stuff. The other thing is that it's clear that we have a lot of resources and capacity in the village, but as there's this term now called people working in their silos, which is, you're in your organization and you're just paying attention to what your organization is doing. I mean, one might say, it's my impression that Antioch College is doing that. Maybe for good reasons, but they're doing that. And other organizations in town are doing that too. So I have continued to be interested in seeing, are there ways that we can pull the resources, especially from Home Inc., which is the only housing development organization in the village and does have a lot of expertise, and the Development Corporation, which can do a lot of things that the village government can't do. Those are the two big organizations, I think, along with village government, that together, whether it's a formal relationship together or just so that we all know what everyone else is doing and can do, I think it would be beneficial for our housing effort. And what I would like to do, I know there's a pause, I believe, on the housing team that's going to come back in November, is I'd like to continue reaching out to different organizations. And Cindy Seek, who has experience, there's this thing called collective impact, which is a sort of theory about how groups can come together and work together. Cindy has done that work, and she also has indicated a willingness to facilitate people talking together about how we might do that. So I would like to continue having some conversations with people. Probably I'm going to be on vacation for much of this month, but in October, and bring whatever we find out back to that housing group. And I'd also, if there's someone from the housing group, a council person, either, I guess it's Gavin or Brian, who'd like to be a part of conversations, I would like that. And I thought if Meg was available, that as well. So that's
Great.
And excuse me, I will piggyback on that. I think Marian did a great job of summarizing some of the high points from the meeting, and her memo, I think, went beyond what the meeting discussed, but also certainly talked about the resources that we have available. I think a general sentiment of the group was we certainly ought to put our shoulders to the wheel, if you will, for the things that are happening already from a housing perspective in the village. I think everyone felt that this process, this year-long planning process, was a positive process, but we just felt that we were further ahead of the curve, if you will. We didn't need to spend a year to get to where we are now. But again, there's certainly, I think, potential for a great deal of benefits, and I think a chief among those is to the point Marian just raised, which is getting all these groups that are stakeholders, if you will, in a room together and ensuring that we're doing, all the best things the right way, not to get in the way of what's happening, but if we can enhance and improve those processes, fine, let's go ahead and do that. But I think it was an overall positive, and I think we should try to take advantage of the momentum that's been started and do what we can to make sure that we do the best that we can for the village in terms of providing all types of housing. Thanks.
So I think in terms of your request, if Gavin is able to join those conversations, then that would be great. And if not, I will do that. But I think,
Can I, really quickly? So this is something that would happen outside of Housing Committee. So this is another group that would happen.
No, I'm not really suggesting that another group be formed, but I would like to dig down a little more into what the different organizations and groups can offer to a housing effort. And then maybe all it is to be able to come to the Village Housing Group and say, well, here are the things that Home Inc. can offer to housing.
Mm-hmm.
This is what the livable, equitable, age-friendly
Yellow space.
group, this is the information they have, sort of like at least pull the information and resources that different groups have been working on together so everyone knows what everyone else is doing. That would be sort of the minimum. Beyond that would be like, oh, well, say for the housing group, maybe it makes sense to have Home Inc. represented in the housing group, or maybe it makes sense to have a YSDC person. I don't know. I'm not suggesting a particular form.
Okay.
I'm just saying we have a lot of resources, we have a lot of expertise in this community, but it is sort of in these silos, and people don't necessarily know what other people are doing.
So I think the part about it was challenging for me is that I feel like I'd like to have one sort of contiguous conversation, particularly with staff, so that we're giving, I think we've talked about this before at council, where we give sort of mixed messages about what we're doing. So I think the hard part was, from my end, is that it felt like we were communicating with a mix of council and staff about how to approach housing through the committee. Then we had, obviously there was a change up with Josue leaving and then also Meg coming on. So there's been some shifts that have happened right as we were trying to make some of these changes. And I think everybody is aware from our last meeting that there was also a dynamic where there was shifting conversations at the staff level. I think that's a fair characterization about the prioritization of projects, and that the sort of communication loop hadn't finished. So the thing I get a little, and it was, I don't know, it was just a little disappointing not to it's like we had a thread of conversation kind of going over here, and then there was sort of a separate conversation, and then to find out in the packet that it was a thing that had been done where there had been other council members involved that weren't part of the housing committee. What I'm hoping is that we can have one sort of contiguous kind of conversation and dialogue. Now, the idea you're talking about gathering the resources and things, I wasn't at the meeting, so I don't know how much of this feels like it's a useful exercise for the people to participate in meetings. I would leave it up to them, whether it sounds like they said they didn't want to do the collective impact process, but if there is like a gathering of here are the resources, I'll say some of that we had started to do. You know, at one of these meetings, there was a request to reach out to, for instance, Home Inc., St. Mary, YSDC. We gathered that, you know, we began gathering that exact information about some of those groups. And then things got stalled because of the some of the shifts. So if it's useful to gather, if folks want to be responsive and you have time to gather information about what people can bring to the table, that sounds totally fine to me. My hope is that we can essentially have one contiguous conversation with staff, and that includes building out a committee. And it's like hard to say all this without beating around the bush. Part of the dynamic was there were some really tough relationships with our past village manager and some of our key stakeholders in town.
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly when all this was going on, but I guess what I'd say is, like, can you just give us like a minute to go on the track we were going on with? We had started to work on some goals. We had started working on setting some priorities so that we could go in one direction instead of going in a bunch of different directions. That's my interest.
Well,
Yeah.
I also, I have a few more months on council, and I'll be gone. I mean, I won't be gone, but in terms of being a council member, I will be. And
You'll
it's
be
my...
on the housing committee.
Huh? It's my sense
Yeah, how about
that...
I don't
How
know
about
if she
that?
heard that.
No, Brian said you'll be on the housing, Brian said you'll be on the housing committee.
Maybe. That doing significant work in housing is going to take a lot of people getting, in terms of what you're saying, aligned. I have no interest in having, we're going to, I mean, actually, there are a lot of different things. There are a lot of, I mean, you know, if there's this whole thing about ADUs, there's a thing about changing zoning. I mean, there are a lot of different aspects, but what I would like to, I don't think the village can do it by itself. I do not think the village can do housing by itself. And I think we now have a village manager who's not only the village manager, he's also the public works director. And the idea of having a committee that's being led by the village manager, when he was only the village manager, it's my sense things could have gone faster and more robust than they were. And now we have Johnnie, who has these two roles he's doing. So if we can add more capacity, however that is done, and I'm not suggesting that I don't know how it would be done, but we have capacity in the village. So that's what I'm trying to do, saying how can we bring the capacity and the interest and the knowledge base together in
Yeah,
some
and I
way.
guess what I'm saying is that we're working in that direction. I think the biggest dynamic is that we weren't on the same page about what our priorities were. So if we can get on the same page, particularly with our village manager, we weren't all on the same page. So if we can get on the same page with our village manager in particular about what our priorities are, it makes a huge difference in whether, and then we can figure out what do we need capacity for. So for example, if we're trying to figure out how to do massive low-income housing tax credit project at Glass Farm, it's a totally different project than if we're trying to figure out how to do, add, and I don't mean to be just in terms of scale, a totally opposite end would be adding a couple of units at Lawson Place, right? Which is what the last proposal was, is that we would go all the way to the other side of the spectrum. So all I'm suggesting, I'm all for bringing people in. I'm just saying, let's first get our house in order in terms of what we actually want to see happen, so we know what people to bring in.
Well, I'll push back on that, because some of these organizations, let's say the senior center or the age-friendly group, they have some things they have to bring to the table are they know some of the needs that exist. And so I think that we want to have those voices saying,
100%.
hey, this is what we want to see happening, as opposed to the village sitting in our little group and saying, well, okay.
I totally agree. I'm not saying not to involve, that was part of the problem, is we were not able to actively think about how do we communicate and engage other community members in the conversation. Totally agree, and that's something we had started trying to work out. Yeah, no, it was a clunky poor process, I don't know what to say. But we were working through the issues, and then we had a couple significant changes.
So,
Anyway, go ahead.
so really quickly, because we're kind of going on here, just, what I hear is, hey, a lot of changes have happened. We've gone through a lot of different transitions. Let's just take a break and regroup. One of the things that I remember Denise very, very passionately stating, apartments, mixed income, multi-generational, income-based apartments, so we don't have to import our workforce, so people that work here can afford to live here. That was a part of our priority, and everyone talks about affordable housing, but it's more like income-based housing. And I just feel like I'm hearing kind of the general consensus, like, whoa, hang on a second, we're gonna do it, we got it, but do we have the capacity for more meetings? Do we have the capacity for that right now? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. And I would submit that we're in vibrant agreement with each other. So I think we probably can go on, and I will just address a point to the degree that there was tension between our previous village manager and any stakeholders. I would commend Johnnie for already making efforts to address those issues and bring about reconciliation. So I think we're in a good place now, as long as we all do, Gavin, to your point, keep our eyes on those priority projects. And I think we can talk about shifting priorities, or we take the list of 4 and move them around and whatnot. And I think that's to Marian's point. Some of the other stakeholders might weigh in and suggest that things change. Maybe that's, we talked about the numbering system, 1, 2, 3, whatever, last time. So, as we wrap up this topic.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, Marian, what Gavin said, which was, at that last housing committee meeting, everyone recognized the need to, widen the tent. And so I think the efforts that you're going after make a lot of sense and resonate. And I heard Gavin affirm that as well. So I guess I'll say again, I think that if you guys can liaise on this in the short term, that would make sense.
We can talk.
And then with that recognition that, the housing committee is gonna gear up again in November and start to go full force, and we're gonna need those other folks in the mix. And so, but anyway, what I heard from everybody on the committee was a recognition that, we needed to broaden that tent, so. Okay. All right, so I believe we added the American Municipal Power opportunity to new business, so.
We did. So let me get you caught up from what I got caught up on today. AMP is pursuing a grant through the USDA for renewable energy. They want us to sign a letter of intent. It's non-binding, but to show them that we're interested in the project so they can submit for the grant on September 15th. What that does, if they do get the grant and we go on and get more renewable energy from American Municipal Power, 25% is covered by the USDA. So literally, if it's 8 cents, we would literally get 2% off of that. So, or 25%. So I need to sign the paper and send over to them if that's what you want me to do. They did give me a list of what they recommend for the LOI interest amount, which I'm going to tell you these numbers, they probably don't make sense, but it's 900 kW on the Prairie. Smoky Mountain Hydro is 900 kW, and Blue Creek Wind Farm is also 1,200 kW. They are trying to get the peak load for the village and renewable to better save us for when the peak happens.
That would be our portion?
That would be our portion
9,
of their
9, and
project.
12?
9, 9, and 12. Now, that's KW, so that is the demand. So. And again, it is, it's a letter of intent, non-binding, and we could actually, the question that Judy and I asked today, if we see this and with the increased load, can we add to, or can we take away when we come back to council with the proposal if they get it? And they said absolutely.
So it would be increasing the amount of energy that we're getting from sources, these existing sources.
There is one new source,
Oh,
so it would be the Smoky Mountain Hydro. And again, talking about relationships and damages, I've reached out to John Courtney, which has been part of the village for many, many years, and I've asked to have a phone call with him the week of September 11th as well, to better help answer a lot of questions.
Well, this certainly sounds all positive. I think, Johnny, that last point you raised about us being able to pull back if needed, yeah, it sounds like we do a little bit and we could get a lot.
Correct.
Out of it in return. So I'm
Do you
certainly in
know
favor.
offhand what our, like, gap is that we go to market on?
I do not off the market, but this is for demand, this is for the
Oh, for
peak.
demand. Oh, yeah.
So our gap right now is about 2.1,
Okay,
so.
gotcha. Okay, questions? Okay, so I think Johnny's asking us to vote to approve submitting a letter of intent. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Great opportunity.
Thank you, Johnny.
Yes. All right, so I wrote Antioch College property under new business. Did we add that, or? Okay, we did. All right. Okay.
I just brought, it's really a simple question.
Yeah.
So like, I know that there was a thing in the paper, I mean, it seems like a big development for the village. It's a significant change. I know I've started hearing rumors about who's buying what and what's going where, including the prospect of, development that would include things like apartments, which, apartments. So I guess I just wanted to check, is this something that like, are we reaching out? If so, is there a conversation going? Just to check in.
Yeah. Marian, do you want to say anything?
well, Brian and I talked with Lisa Abel today. The Development Corporation had been in conversation with the college, and my understanding is the college broke off the conversations and gave the 2 properties to a realtor, and they're now sale pending. So I have no idea who.
So, yeah, so I guess I'll say, I mean, I wasn't sure how much we were going to talk about this tonight, but
Yeah, I'm not asking us to get into
Yeah.
details that are not appropriate to get into. I was basically saying.
I think we should elevate it to the point that, I'm concerned. I thought, through the Development Corporation, we had a relationship where we were thinking about like the greater good for the community. I mean, we know about a property that sold, that suddenly got split into 4 big lots, and then a parking lot that, went for well above market. And so, yeah, so I think it is something that I'd love to figure out how we have a better conversation and relationship about this, because it directly impacts the village. And I think that Antioch alums care about, what's going on, but we're not at the table. So, and now that DC is like not at the table, we're completely out of the conversation, so.
So like one person I was talking to, the idea, like there was one of the I think it's Sontag Fells, is that right?
Yeah.
One of the buildings. There was discussion about, again, I'm just like rumor mill stuff. I don't know.
Why are we doing it?
Huh?
Why are we doing it?
The reason I'm bringing it up is because, for example, if that could be apartments, and the
Right.
difference between it being market rate apartments and it being affordable housing is the village engaging in the project to help functionally close the gap around subsidies, for example, by being a good partner.
Right, I get that.
I'm just basically saying, is there somebody on our team that's like trying to, and that if the relationships are not working over here, are we trying other angles? I'm just bringing it up to say, hey, it feels like a major opportunity, that's all.
So I
If
think,
everybody's on it,
yeah, so I think
Everyone's-
we definitely talked about like some strategies for getting back in the conversation.
Cool.
I mean, the Commons is another great example of where, I mean, that could be awesome affordable housing. I think there's no reason for any council member or, staff member to try to, engage.
What, You
So,
said you think there is no reason?
I mean, we should try to engage. Like, so if anybody has like a relationship, and I think it is important to say, like, I mean, we want to work together. I mean, that's.
Yeah, and I think that being public right now, saying that, well, first of all, I think the village government has always been supportive of Antioch College, and the community understands what an important institution historically the college has been. And also, that all of that property is part of the village, and to the extent that the village government can be involved in helping to see that that property is used in a way that is important for the village, we want to do that. And
Right.
hopefully, the college will take that into account.
Yep.
I think that before we get too far in the weeds with that, I think that it's important that we focus on the property that we do have control over. There are really a lot of very moving, complicated parts with this Antioch thing, a lot of relationships with the college and the village. There's a lot of stuff going on over there, and I think that we should focus on what we have control over. I think we should, if we're talking about housing or potential housing, or maybe one day Fel Sontag possibly being, okay, we also have property that we can concentrate on.
Yep.
And in that way, I just don't want to run the risk of, that whole like too soon thing. Like I think that we should probably pull back a little bit. And I know it's being talked about, and there's a rumor mill because we have a small town, but also let's concentrate on the stuff that we can control.
So
And I think that's a fair like comment, which is that, we don't want to bite off more than we can chew, kind of thing, so.
So I disagree. I think that property is so important, and I'm not suggesting the village go out and try and buy all that property. I'm not suggesting that. But that is why we have that is one of the reasons why we have the Development Corporation. And we do have people in town who have some money. We have a community foundation. There could be acquisition of some of that property for the community if the college is willing to do that. And we may have a small window of opportunity, and once the decision is made, it's made. So I think it's important to pay attention to it.
Yep. I also agree with that. I mean, again, it's not easy. So, well, thanks for bringing it up, Gavin, because I actually did want to talk about it a little bit tonight. So, okay. So I think that brings us to agenda planning, our future agenda planning. So we've got plenty going on. We're getting into budget stuff. So what else do we want to be thinking about?
I
Yeah.
have a question. I'm not sure how it would make sense to go forward. So the village has four goals that we've said we're working on. Infrastructure, and there's our guy right there. Housing, we've just been talking about. Economic development, hopefully, we're going to be able to work with the YSDC, and then broadband. It's my sense that we need more capacity in that broadband department, that things are not going very quickly. So I've had a conversation with Scott Fife about this and have some thoughts about it. I don't know how to move, I don't know if to put it on the agenda, or maybe talk with you, Johnny, offline.
Yeah, we have a potential partner in that regard. So I think, and one of the things that Kevin and I are going to talk with Johnnie about next week in our check-in is reporting out on those 4 areas. So why don't I suggest that for the next meeting, we talk about what that partner can offer. But we had a really good meeting, and they have the capacity not only to build out the rest of the network, but also to provide like all the services that we can't.
Yeah, excellent.
So, and they seem really interested in working with us, so, yeah.
Great.
So we'll make sure that happens at the next meeting.
And then we're moving the event fee budgeting discussion down to October 2nd because Amy's not going to be here for the September 18th, so.
Okay.
So, I guess I wanted to throw out, I don't know when exactly, but just that it feels like it'd be relevant for us to do a follow-up on the village manager hiring conversation. This isn't, no changes, Johnny, it's a budget consideration, it's a, so it feels like it would be relevant for us to talk about whether or not we want to set aside money, whether or not we're gonna, on what timeline, just to have a conversation about that. So I don't know if others agree, but it felt relevant to me, so I wanted to bring it up.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
The only other thing I had down was just checking about the remainder of the calendar. So I know we had that budget draft for November, December, so just the,
Did you get the updated,
this one?
with the budget?
I have the ones for October on here.
That's
I don't-
all, oh,
I'm just saying.
right, so I didn't drop in when the ordinance is coming and all that stuff, so yes, I can do that.
Yeah, there were just some dates on that November one
Yeah.
that I don't know if I know I had a conflict on at least one of them.
Well,
And
those are the 3 dates you guys chose, so you didn't go into November, but I can also drop in, here's when you're first reading the ordinance, here's second reading the ordinance. Yeah, I'll put
Great.
that in.
And then this 12th one that Judy sent an email about, could we do the morning of the 12th instead of 1 to 3 on the 12th?
I've got yeses from staff on it,
Okay. So
And-
fellow council people?
2 council people
This is,
on it.
if it's not clear, this is my scheduling issue that I'm hoping, I'd love to be there if possible, but I understand.
It works for me.
And the time we suggested was 9 to 11.
Yeah.
I think that was my whenever email. Is that right?
You actually sent it before that, but if you're
Okay.
still in whenever mode.
I am still in
can plug it.
whenever mode.
Okay, excellent.
What day are we talking about?
October 12th is a
Thursday.
Thursday.
9 to 11 instead of 1 to 3.
That's so far out, it's okay for now.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Well, I have no doubt that we've got plenty to talk about. It also occurred to me, when is that, American Power Week happening?
For the conference?
Yeah, well, I saw, is it the first week of October? It made me think that maybe our first meeting in October should also be a follow-up on, kind of infrastructure stuff.
Sure.
So, yeah, something AMP has got American Power Week or whatever, I don't know, so.
I think it's the first week in October.
Yeah. All right, so maybe let's put that in the mix. Okay. All right, well, with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right,
Again, a second.
Happy post-Labor Day, everyone.
Thank you.